The following is brought to you by Bleacher Report. If you guys want to check out my live post-game reaction show, make sure to have the Bleacher Report app downloaded and ready to fire up right after the game. You'll find me in the Chargers section. Bolt up.
Oh, my God. Oh, hey, everybody. Chargers fans, what's up, everybody? What's up, y'all? Wasn't that the most entertaining game of NFL football your eyes have ever graced in your time as a Chargers fan? Man, that was pretty boring. That was a pretty boring experience for both Chargers fans, I'm sure. Broncos fans as well. Oh, my goodness. I can't tell you how many times, I had to, not sponsored. I can't tell you how many of these I had to pound just to get through this game. Definitely a riveting one. But you know what? One in the end that was kind of important. I think the Chargers and its fans, maybe not as devastated by this loss because of what it means in terms of draft position. Of course, some Chargers fans going as far as rooting against the Bolts to go ahead and hit that 5-12 record and help the Bolts maybe position themselves in the top 5 in terms of draft position. You know how crazy it is, man? The Chargers almost ended the day with a top 5 pick and a chance at a top 3. You know why that is? The New York Giants almost took down their opponent this week. Was it the Rams that they were playing? Man, last second missed field goal would have given the Giants, would it be a 6-10 record and given the Chargers the number 5 pick right now. And then, of course, the Arizona Cardinals go out there and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, which would have helped us, in terms of meeting up a little bit closer with that number 4 pick. New England almost took down the Bills. It's been crazy. It's been a wild ride. If any of you Chargers fans are still tuning in on Sunday, I'm sure it's in the light of keeping track of where our draft position will be. So some Chargers fans tonight, after our 4th straight loss, definitely celebrating as we have secured, as of right now, the number 6 pick in the draft. That, of course, could climb depending on what happens next week. I don't know if we're going to jump the Giants. I think they do play the Philadelphia Eagles next week. Of course, anything could happen. Them Eagles just dropped the big game versus the Arizona Cardinals. So never say never, I suppose. But if I were a betting man, I would maybe think the Chargers end the season with the number 6 pick. If we're lucky, the number 5 pick. If we're less than lucky, maybe number 7. If we somehow go out there and shock the world with the win over Kansas City, then I still think we're going to be in the top 8, top 10 picks. That's where we're at right now, which is pretty interesting. Now, I'm already saying in the chat, tank for Bowers, tank for Neighbors. We're going to talk a little bit about that in today's stream as well. I think it's pretty important to follow what the Chargers fans' consensus is in terms of favorites for the draft. If the Chargers had been drafting, let's just say in terms of consensus fan favorites, at this point we would have Rashawn Slater, we'd have Trent McDuffie, and we would have Zay Flowers. I think it's pretty important that we follow what the Chargers fans are looking for, because I don't think we've been wrong since, honestly, the Justin Herbert draft. We were very wrong there. But either way, man, let's go over what we're talking about today in today's stream. This game versus the Broncos, which, again, a snoozer. Definitely not the most entertaining game I've ever seen. But it does shine a light on some of the problems that we need to address next season. And they're pretty important, okay? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Jim Harbaugh news as well. I don't know if you guys have been following that. We're definitely going to cover that. And we're going to cover a little bit about Neighbors and Bowers and maybe a little bit about roster construction. But let's go ahead and start with this game. We're going to go ahead and share our screen here real quick. Just to give you guys some scores here. There we go. All right. So let's take a look at the stats. Now, of course, this game where we've got 2 backup quarterbacks in the same room, that situation very, very messy. We weren't expecting too much out of these guys. Easton's sick these last couple of weeks, and then obviously next week as well. Kind of a continued tryout for the Chargers quarterback 2 spot going on next season. I'm not 100% convinced that we bring him back. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think he's been just fine as a backup quarterback. But you bring in, let's say, a fresh head coach and GM, they might want a new face that they favor or somebody that they can build up out of the draft, or maybe a young guy in free agency of their choosing. Either way, Easton Stick has been doing fine as a backup. 220 yards here, 1 sack, no touchdowns. But you can also add on the ground another 31 yards there. So 250 yards, that's respectable, right? That's leading the offense. Definitely not too bad. As for the backup right now, some of you guys were asking about Max Duggan. Is Duggan even on the squad? I don't even know anymore. That guy's been cut and uncut so many times. I have no idea where he's at right now. He could be in the parking lot of a McDonald's right now waiting for his order, or he could be in the locker room right now getting ready for next week's game. I have no idea where Max Duggan is. I think it's Will Grier that's the backup right now. Either way, tryouts for quarterback 2. They're commencing. Who knows what happens next season? One okay thing to monitor right now is Austin Eckler's been kind of bouncing back a little bit. 3.5 yards carry doesn't look great, but he looked different this week as he did last week. I think he's trying to put together a resume for free agency this year. I do not think he comes back with the Chargers this season. But that's something to look at. Chargers do need an improvement on their run game. And as for receiving, this guy's kind of starting to surprise me. This Alex Erickson guy. He's been looking not half bad, right? Let me see if I can get this a little bigger for you guys. That's about what we're going to get. He's been looking not too bad. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 98 yards. Definitely making a case for maybe a practice squad guy next year, deep wide receiver position next year. Who knows? Quentin Johnson got 6 targets, 3 receptions, 29 yards. Haven't seen much in terms of growth from him, which is kind of concerning. But once again, I think the MVP of the game for the Chargers, outside of a blocked field goal, was Cameron Dicker, 3 of 4. No touchdowns for the Chargers this week. 9 points. Yeah, Cameron Dicker certainly deserves his flowers. Chargers fans for the longest time had been watching just absolute nonsense at the kicker position. Dicker comes in and certainly helps our situation there. So not too bad. As for the defense, not a great day. Stidham was out there throwing some nonsense and getting maybe some lucky plays, but nonetheless, he was finding success because of how bad the defense was. Okay. And before we even dive into that a little bit, I want to tell you guys this whole situation with the backup quarterback. You guys asking maybe why is Jarrett Stidham in here instead of Russell Wilson? I can't tell you the full background as to why that is, but the rumor has it that the Denver Broncos have benched Russell Wilson for the remainder of the season because of contract obligations, where they don't want to pay him, is what it sounds like. I think stuff in the background is more than likely causing this decision in terms of maybe some diva attitude from Russell Wilson, and that he's probably going to be cut in March or traded or whatever. That situation is pretty crazy to me, but it seems like one that if you're going to have a guy like Sean Payton leading your team as the head coach, he's not going to put up with stuff like that. And he definitely led with his actions there. So very shocking. Nonetheless, something to monitor going into next season. The Broncos are going to continue having to build, maybe find another quarterback. AFC West is always a moving machine. And it's another factor to key in for 2024. Now for the defense, and this is going to kick off, I would say, my first topic of real discussion for 2024 that I think is very important. First off, the stats here. Jarrett Stidham had a solid day, as most backup quarterbacks do versus the Chargers this season. Rushing was this guy, McLaughlin. Williams didn't do as well, not even close. McLaughlin was kind of popping off with that burst and speed. Receiving, we had that ridiculous touchdown by, I think his name is Lil Jordan Humphrey. Of course, the long of 54 yards. That was the big touchdown by him. Jerry Jeudy had a decent day. Johnson had a decent day. Just all around decent for an offense that we were expecting to kind of fall on their face this week. And that's going to lead me to my first topic here, man. I think that the Chargers defense needs a full reset. Not maybe full reset, but we need to hit the reset button somewhere. Because along the lines of the last couple of seasons, the Chargers kind of dedicated themselves and their resources to building this master defense, this premium defense behind the defensive-minded head coach and Brandon Staley. Make that their identity. We are the defensive team. We're going to punch them in the mouth, cause some turnovers, get some interceptions, be very difficult to run and pass on. That was kind of the idea going into the whole Brandon Staley era. Well, that blew up in our faces pretty spectacularly. That was one of the most spectacular misfortunes I've seen in the Chargers in terms of their luck in a long time. That hire was terrible. The Chargers defense was terrible. As a matter of fact, the Chargers, who had I would say, middle of the pack defense behind Gus Bradley before Brandon Staley took over as head coach, was not terrible, right? That's where players earn their reputations. Like Joey Bosa, he earned a reputation in the Gus Bradley system. Derwin James earned a reputation in the Gus Bradley system. These players that are deemed top tier in their positions, earned that not behind Brandon Staley, but behind other defensive coordinators like Gus Bradley. At least back then, we were like middle of the pack. Nothing great, nothing terrible, just okay. I would take that any day of the week compared to what Brandon Staley left in terms of a big, heaping, disgusting mess that we have in Los Angeles right now. That defense is bad. And it's caused me to really take pause. This game in particular caused me to take pause and say, okay, just how bad is this situation? Where are we at with the defense? Nothing against Derek Ansley. He's doing what he can with the last couple of weeks, calling the plays now, yada, yada, yada. But I think the damage caused by Brandon Staley is so severe that the next guy we bring in may need to hit the reset button a little bit. And when I say reset button, I think, yeah, we're going to have to move some players, but I think we may even need to move schemes a little bit. The Chargers right now play loosely like a 3-4 system, like multiple D, whatever. It's a bit of a complex system that was built in Los Angeles with the Rams, tried to convert it over to the Chargers, who don't have Aaron Donald, who don't have Jalen Ramsey, and we fell on our face pretty hard. I think the Chargers would probably do themselves some good by maybe simplifying things a little bit, maybe going back to 4-3. I think Joey Bosa looked better in 4-3. If we keep Khalil Mack, I know he looks okay in 4-3. Thule, I'm sure, looks okay in 4-3. Maybe it's something in terms of change that dramatic is required. But at very minimum, I think, let's say we bring in Jim Harbaugh. I know a lot of people want Jim Harbaugh. We're going to talk about him in just a second. I think whoever comes in with Jim Harbaugh as a defensive coordinator and the GM and whatever, all these guys need to work in conjunction and say, okay, is any part of the Brandon Staley defense going to work going forward? Because I vote no. I think the Brandon Staley defense is at such a low point right now that it's time to move on. Keep a couple of players, like I think Joey Bosa, because of contract, mainly, it's somebody that needs to return. Derwin James needs to return, and needs to return to form. The young guys like Thule and Asante Samuel Jr., and outside of that, I think you're looking at a lot of turnover in terms of players. We got to get a new identity on defense, dude. Because what I saw today was tragic. The tackling in particular was tragic. The coverage in particular was tragic. You got this guy, Lil Jordan Humphrey, catching 54-yard touchdowns because he's going to break 3 tackles before going into the end zone. That's horrible. That's disgusting. I saw what should have been a 9 out of 10 times interception by Derwin James slip through his hands, his fingertips. Same thing with Asante Samuel Jr. This team and this defense, in my opinion, was built on the idea of generating really good pressure, which that's why we went after Khalil Mack, which that was a success. But it doesn't matter how much pressure that we're causing when it comes to turnover moments, turnover plays where we need to capitalize with a Derwin James and Asante Samuel, whoever's out there. Right now, probably our best DB in terms of generating turnovers has been Alohi Gilman. When it comes to those moments, we don't capitalize. Those moments pass us by. Like that meme when they're crossing the cars, right? They're just passing each other. You see the Chargers fans looking over, and then another interception opportunity waving right back at us as we pass them on by. The idea of the Chargers defense failed. And that's causing me to think it is time for a change in identity for defense, which is also going to be a year in terms of offense changing their identity as well. When it comes to starting fresh, the 2024 Chargers are probably going to be one of the most dramatic pivots we've seen as Chargers fans in a long time. Whether it be Harbaugh, whether it be Ben Johnson, whether it be Bill Belichick, whatever the case is, I think the Chargers are going to look completely different, not just in offense, which a lot of us are paying attention to because of how bad it was this season, but on defense as well. I know we needed improvement on defense, but I think it's going to require more change in terms of personnel, maybe even system and scheme, than a lot of us are realizing. Chargers defense is terrible right now. It's awful. Bottom of the league. And even after Brandon Staley, it still looks terrible. Dramatic change, man. Dramatic results demand dramatic change, and I think dramatic change is coming on defense. All right? Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably out here saying, Director, we want the hot news. We want fresh off the presses. We want what's the next hot take on the Jim Harbaugh rumors to the Los Angeles Chargers. And yes, they have been heating up the last couple of days. Man, there's so much to talk about with Jim Harbaugh. I didn't even know where to start. Okay, first off, tomorrow, Rose Bowl, California, big game. Could be something that helps determine Jim Harbaugh's decision. I happen to be of the opinion that Jim already knows what he's doing. He's just kind of going through the motions, whether it's going back to Michigan, whether it's taking an NFL job, whether it's the Chargers specifically. I think he already knows what he's going to do. He's just not told anybody else. There's some guys, maybe with inside sources, that know a little bit more than we do. I've heard, whispers of Colin Cowherd knowing something, or Rich Eisen knowing something. I don't know. We as a fan community have no idea. But some people are speculating that a national title could help weigh in on the decision for Jim Harbaugh. And a lot of Chargers fans are asking me this stream today, Director, what do we want? If we're watching, the Rose Bowl tomorrow, who are we rooting for? I would say probably root for Michigan, because the speculation revolving around that right now is that if Jim Harbaugh goes out there and wins a national title, that could be like the final pin up on his career for college football. And now it's time to go after the big ring, the big prize, right, in the Lombardi Trophy. Again, that's all speculation. We don't know, but keep that in mind. Rose Bowl tomorrow kind of starts kicking stuff off with that, and we'll see how far Michigan makes it in terms of the college national championship. But either way, something to monitor right there. Okay. But speaking of the Rose Bowl, Jim Harbaugh obviously was in town, spotted by Chargers fans in a couple of different locations. For one, at the happiest place on earth, at Disneyland, which of course you're going to see coaches and stuff when they're coming and visiting, play the Rose Bowl or whatever. They're going to go with their family, spend some time there. He had this whole thing, I guess, planned out with the park, where he was like on a float or something, like a chariot or a cart. He was waving at fans and stuff like that. There was Chargers fans in the crowd. Come to the Chargers, yada. And it's so TMZ out here right now with Chargers fans. It's hilarious, and I'm about it. I'm riding that hype, dude. Like every time someone says, "Hey, did you see the twinkle in Jim Harbaugh's eye when we said Chargers? He's coming to the Bolts, baby." I'm eating that up, dude. I totally am. I'm sorry. Like, it's reality TV at its finest for me right now, and I'm gobbling it up, man. Nom, nom, nom. There's a lot of fun stuff happening out there. And that rumor was more the wife turned around. She's like, "Oh my God, yeah, the Chargers. Let's go Chargers," in that instance. But the big one that I got tagged in yesterday on Twitter was, at first it was just a write-up of a tweet saying, "Hey, man," and this is all text, okay? It's like, "Hey, man, I just ran into Jim Harbaugh at Disneyland, and I told him to come to the Chargers, and he turned around, and he smiled at his goofy face, and he gave me a big thumbs up." And that just drove everybody crazy. We're like, wow, that's awesome. I'm calling BS on that, though, but that's awesome. Well, guess what happens like 15 minutes later? Dude comes back with video evidence of that interaction. The dude says, "Hey, come to the Chargers." And sure enough, you see goofy Jim Harbaugh turn around, go, "Oh." Like, of course, that doesn't mean anything. It's all speculation. But hey, dude, like, come on, let's ride the hype a little bit. That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun to think about. And then, of course, there was the interview. I think it was still at the park, where he's being asked about the NFL job opportunity, and then more specifically about the Chargers. He does kind of dodge the question. Of course, he's got that look on his face, like what we're referring to, the twinkle in his eye. But yeah, there's a lot of that going around. So that was the interaction at the park. Then on the other end of things, with Harbaugh being in town, of course, Michigan getting ready for that big game tomorrow. The Chargers, out of the warmth of their hearts and the grace of their charity, decided to open their arms to Michigan in letting them use the SoFi Stadium as their practice grounds for that Rose Bowl. out of the kindness of their hearts, allowed Jim Harbaugh and his team to come experience the awe and wonder of our facility while preparing for that game. I don't buy that for 1 second, dude. I know it's so hard to think, right? Like, we're just speculating here, right? Not everything's with a grain of salt, but like, come on, man. We don't think for 1 second Harbaugh's looking around like, okay, all right. Like, if you guys have never been to SoFi, it's a spectacle. It's a wonder of the world, right? The eighth wonder of the world. But on top of that, I'm sure Harbaugh was there. I'm sure the Spanoses were there. Like, come on, man. At this point, and I'm so cautious of this because as Chargers fans, we know the feeling of crushing disappointment after an epic buildup, right? And for most of the time, that's what we do from quarters 1 through 3, just to spectacularly blow up in our face in quarter 4 of a football game. Like, that's just kind of how we roll. That's the Chargers, baby. I hope that's not the case with what's going on right now, because the evidence continues to stack on itself. on whether or not Harbaugh's coming to the Chargers or not. And right now, that looks pretty good to me. Like, that's a lot of evidence. And then to top it off, yesterday we got news that Jim Harbaugh had officially hired an agent, an NFL talent agent. I think his name is Donald H. Lee. Okay. That in itself is pretty telling. That in and of itself is a pretty significant move for a college football player that's not sure he's making the jump to the NFL, or college football coach, right? That's a pretty big move. Because why in the world are you going to hire an agent if you're going to stay where you are and sign a contract that's already been offered to you? If you guys didn't know this, Jim Harbaugh got offered a contract by Michigan. I think it's like 5 years, $125 million, something like a pretty nice contract, right? But the one negative about that contract is that there's a clause in it that says you can't go out and look for an NFL job if you sign this. You're stuck with us, at least for this year, right? Well, he's not signed it. And instead, what he does is he goes hires an agent saying, hey, you know how that clause says I can't go look for an NFL job? Well, I need you to go look for an NFL job for me. So that's what this guy does. He represents guys like Sean Payton, Tom Brady. That's what Don H. Lee does. Now, even further digging also revealed that Don H. Lee has connections to the Los Angeles Chargers. They opened up a charity organization. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. Back in 2021, I do believe. And those guys are pretty close-knit. Those guys have been working together for a minute. It doesn't mean anything. Again, it's all pure speculation, but the evidence keeps stacking up. The fact that he would hire an agent really speaks towards him wanting to make that jump to the NFL. Maybe just keeping his options open, whatever. But, like, that's pretty telling. And the Chargers, of course, the most attractive job, I would say, in the entirety of football, not just, NFL, but maybe even college right now, just because you've got that ready-made quarterback. You've got a top 10 pick, potentially top 5 pick. You got young talent all over the roster. Like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. A new head coach coming into that situation, you're going to be looking very, very good going forward because you already have pieces that you need to succeed. So it's very interesting. Very, very interesting to see how this situation continues to build on itself. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers feels more real every day. Until we see the ink dry, though, nothing is a certainty. Nothing is for sure. But I'm sure as heck having a lot of fun following the rumors and the hype. It's not something I normally do in terms of like that reality TV kind of energy. But man, it's been fun to think about what this team would look like behind Jim Harbaugh, one of the best coaches in NFL and college ball history that turns a crap team into a contender in just one season. He's done it, like 4 times now? Let's make it 5 with the Los Angeles Chargers, for the love of God. All right? Well, I had a couple other things I wanted to talk about in this stream. Maybe we'll save it for another day. Mainly to do with the draft. I think the Chargers now in position, let's say in pick 6, right? Let's say the Chargers end at pick 6 with one more game to go. The surrounding teams look like they're going to stick where they are too. Let's say the Chargers do hang around at pick 6. The Chargers are going to have some options there, right? We'll lightly touch on this before going in on further detail on another video or live stream or whatever. There's been a big, I would say, not argument, but just like we'll say an argument between Chargers fans on who we would want at that pick, because there's going to be some nice names available. Now, of course, there's the miracle that we get somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr., which I personally don't think is going to happen. I think he's going to be gone inside the top 3 or 4 picks. But there is a big, big chance that we see guys like Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers available at pick 6 for the Chargers. Now, of course, it could shake out in a way where Neighbors is gone by pick 6. It makes it kind of easy for Chargers fans to say, let's go after Brock Bowers, right? Let's get the best tight end prospect we've seen since Kyle Pitts, which, mind you, he is going to be the best. Just wait till this guy blows the roof off the combine, man. Brock Bowers is going to be insane. But what if we live in this alternate universe where Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers are both available at pick 6? Who are we taking? Because I think there's a case to be made here, right? That you go with Neighbors. Like, this dude, if it weren't from Marvin Harrison Jr., this would be one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time. Somebody made an NFL comp in my chat to Antonio Brown in his prime. That's a great comp right there. Dude, it just has wide receiver 1 written all over him. And pairing him up with a guy like Justin Herbert is very exciting. Because not just that, Neighbors has this insane ability in terms of acceleration and burst that we just don't have on the team right now. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Deebo Samuel a little bit in terms of like that playmaking ability. It's impressive. It's very impressive. So at pick 6, if he's somehow still available, like, I think you pounce on that, right? then there's some other Chargers fans that still make the argument, and I could be part of that group, I'm not going to lie, that say, hey, maybe we still do go with Brock Bowers. Some of you think that's insane. Like, director, what are we thinking? Why would you go tight end? Tight end in the first round never works out. Look at Kyle Pitts. Look at these other guys. Why? What do we even? Well, I think Kyle Pitts would be in a different situation if he wasn't being thrown the ball by Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota and whatever other disaster they have going on there in Atlanta. But on the other hand, you also got to think about the modern NFL success stories in terms of offenses. What are we seeing, man? What do we see today with Lamar Jackson, who had a fantastic day? Of course, it was a lot of just Lamar being an amazing quarterback, but Isaiah Likely's out here picking up some slack from Mark Andrews, who's been a fantastic player to pair up with Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have been very good at keeping available tight ends for Lamar Jackson to utilize in that system. And then you take a look at other teams like the Kansas City Chiefs with Kelsey. Like, where would these quarterbacks be without that position? I don't know. I think tight end is slowly but surely and persistently like knifing its way in to an extremely relevant position on offense. You need it. You kind of need it. And we don't know what the Chargers look like with an elite tight end under the Justin Herbert era. We had like a season maybe with Hunter Henry, and he's not even that elite, right? Brock Bowers is an outlier. He is what Kyle Pitts would have been if he had a top 10 quarterback in the league. That's what I think. Somebody told me that they didn't like it because Kyle Pitts didn't work out. I guarantee you, Kyle Pitts goes to a team with a top 10 quarterback. He's probably the best tight end in football by this point. And now we're starting to see tight ends come in from the draft and make an immediate impact. Look at Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid, right? A lot of these guys, Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer. Bodies of Wonderland. These guys are in like this position all of a sudden is becoming like super relevant and super quick. And when you take a look at the rankings of tight end, like even against last year's class, which is turning out to be phenomenal, Brock Bowers is still miles ahead of all those guys. So all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, well, now we get Justin Herbert, that receiving option, that elite receiving option at tight end that, mind you, could blow the top off of a secondary. Like, he's that fast. All of a sudden you have that playmaking ability from tight end. But then the cherry on top of that, this dude's actually a pretty good blocker. And the Chargers have needed blocking from tight end for a long time, folks, a long time. And that is starting to push the narrative of what's the choice here. If you have Neighbors and Bowers in front of you, which I don't think is going to happen, but who knows? Play Fantasyland with me for a second here. Who do you go with? And everyone seems pretty split down the middle. A lot of people say Neighbors. I'm not going to complain against that. That would be an insane pairing with Justin Herbert. And then some people say Brock Bowers because of how much more he does in terms of blocking, in terms of receiving from the position. And ultimately, we don't know what this offense looks like with a great tight end in a long time. Very tricky. Very tricky to navigate. So you guys in the comment section, I'm going to give it like a minute. I'm already over a little bit. I'm sorry. I probably should have created this before, but I completely forgot. We're going to say Neighbors versus Bowers, and we'll just give it a couple minutes here. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes here to throw in your poll. Neighbors, Bowers, send immediately. Yes. You guys let me know. And it should be live, right? Yeah. You guys let me know in the chat where you're at with that, because it is a legitimate question. If you have both of those guys in front of you at the same time, who are you taking? More than likely, I think at pick 6, where I think the Chargers are going to be positioned, I think Neighbors is gone. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone. I would be shocked if Brock Bowers is gone. And I think that would be an excellent pick there. Now, some people would say maybe we don't want either one of those guys. Maybe we want a tackle. There's a couple really nice tackles out there, and the Chargers are going to need help there at right tackle this season. Some people might say they're looking for another position, maybe on defense, like Kool-Aid McKinstry would be a great pick in and around 6. It's really becoming difficult to find good talent at cornerback. The draft seems to probably be your best position there. And then there's other people saying that maybe we should just trade down. That's always been an option every time the Chargers have a high draft pick, which I'm not going to argue against either, especially in a season where we're about to have a lot of money problems. I'm even seeing people down here saying make a trade for Kyle Pitts with Joey Bosa, 3rd round pick. That would be nuts. That would be nuts. And it's one that I would actually entertain because of how much I still love Kyle Pitts. Either way, very interesting to see. Let's go ahead and go over here. So right now we have, wow, the vote right now is 71% Bowers, 29% Neighbors, which is very interesting because I think there's a lot of people out there, and I could be swayed to that opinion, that would say Neighbors is a far bigger talent and impact for this offense. But at the same time, Bowers just might be that guy, right? He just might be that guy to completely round out this offense and give us not only better receiving, but better blocking, which is very, very interesting. Well, guys, definitely went over on this episode. I do apologize. Thank you so much for joining me on the Neighbors and Bowers topic, on the Jim Harbaugh rumors, and then, of course, the opinion on the Chargers and its defense, and I should say its team, making a big transition. I think games like today, the snoozers, are important to pay attention to because they tell you what you need to fix going forward. So thank you, everybody, so much for joining me. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up, stay frosty, and let's go out there, baby. Go 5-12. And grab ourselves a top 5 pick, man. It's going to be a big, big year of change for Chargers coming up very soon. Take care, everybody.